Hello, and welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. I am Brandon Tessers. I am a licensed therapist, but this is not therapy for very, very many reasons. Marie is just logging on now and will be joining us shortly. Just wanted to make sure to get this going live. I apologize for missing last week unexpectedly, and I didn't want to give the impression that maybe we wouldn't be going again this week. So I wanted to make sure to get it started, but Marie will be here momentarily. You may be able to hear in my voice that I am on the tail end of a cold, not COVID, fortunately. Tested a few times, but it was a bit of a rough weekend. Feeling better today and back at work, although I did shift all my sessions to be online, so nobody's coming in person to breathe whatever I might be breathing out. So this hour, the This Is Not Therapy Hour, is just an open conversation. That can be question and answer or whatever. It's just us here. I'm available. We're sitting and we're talking, and we always pick a topic and we'll start with that topic. Marie will have some questions that she'll be asking me just to get things going. But those of you who are here, if you're typing in the chat, we'll go wherever you want to go. Doesn't need to stay in the topic. Of course, you're welcome to, and we appreciate comments that are evoked by the things that we're talking about, questions or thoughts that come up or examples or whatever. But also, if there's something you want to discuss, just throw it in the chat and we'll go where you want to go. I run a small practice called Effective Artistry, a group therapy and executive functioning coaching practice. Two different things. We have therapists. We also have executive functioning coaches. We specialize in a neurodiversity affirming approach. That's why we do so much talking here about neurodiversity and related issues. The practice is in Northbrook, Illinois, and our therapists are licensed to work with anybody in the state of Illinois. So if you are in the state of Illinois and interested, that's great. For anyone who is not, that's part of why we have coaches as well, because our coaches can work with anyone, anywhere in the world, which of course all is done online and is not therapy. Much like this hour, the This Is Not Therapy Hour is not therapy. I'm kind of vamping a little bit just to make sure that I'm waiting until Marie gets here too. She did mention the topic. I think we're going to be talking about maintaining long-term relationships for people who are neurodivergent, especially. This comes up a lot. Oh, hello, Marie. Are you ready for me to add you?
Hello. Sorry I'm late. Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, good to be with you. I just did kind of the opening spiel and was starting to get into the topic, but I'm glad you're here to talk about it more. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Just back from a trip home, which was nice. A little bit of R&R, so just getting back into the swing of things. Got my pot of tea ready.
Nice.
Got some questions.
Yeah, we ended up canceling and rescheduling the stream last week because Marie was out, which we knew in advance, but I was going to just do it by myself. And then the day showed up and I had a million other things on my plate and figured, never mind, we'll delay it by a week. But your visit home was good?
It was good, yeah. A couple of changes to the routine. My sister has COVID again. So out of an abundance of caution to see my parents because she had been visiting with them a couple of days before. So I spent the week in Dublin. But that was equally nice and restful. I had a great time. Yeah. So got to spend some quality time with my boyfriend, which is good. It was his birthday, so we had a lovely time.
Nice.
Yeah. And I got to see a little bit of a St. Patrick's Day parade, which I haven't done for years. So that was fun. It's always good to see.
What is that like in Ireland?
I don't think it's quite as big as it is in the US.
Yeah.
It's very well. The Dublin Festival is pretty big, but like the small local parades they're just really cute. It's usually like kids, sports teams, and bands and things like that. It's very family focused. It's really nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not quite as wild as some of the things I've heard about in other parts of the world where it's celebrated.
Yeah, I've never really done much of the St. Patrick's thing, but in Chicago especially, there's a large population of Irish expatriates in the Chicago area, so it gets pretty wild. But really, it's mostly to my understanding, just an excuse for people to go out and drink all day long and wear green and have a fun time.
Yeah.
Power to you. That's your thing.
Yeah. That's your thing. Enjoy.
Okay, so today, tell me a bit about what you were thinking that we would talk about today.
So something I've seen come up quite a bit on social media is people talking, particularly people with ADHD, but not exclusively, about difficulties maintaining friendships or feeling terrible that they have accidentally ghosted somebody because they forgot to reply to a text message or a call or something like that. And yeah, I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that, how maybe we can manage our friendships, like especially after 3 years of pandemic life, where a lot of our friendships have been online and we've developed a lot of online friendships, and now we're transitioning back to spending more time meeting people in person, and some of those online friendships might kind of fade into the background. I mean, I've experienced this myself. I've been probably the ghoster and the ghosty at times.
What do you mean by ghost?
Pardon?
What do you mean by ghost?
Well, I guess that's a shorthand, I guess, for what really happens. Like sometimes friendships just fizzle out, but sometimes I think people genuinely forget to respond to text messages, and then so much time passes that you're almost embarrassed to respond, and that doesn't help the friendship either. So this is something I read about a lot on social media, and I hear people talking about it. And I think there's a lot of shame and embarrassment around it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
certainly. One of the things that I do when I meet with people for like consults, or if somebody set up a meeting and missed it or whatever, in my emails, and I use template emails because otherwise I would spend an hour writing an email every time. But one of the things I make sure to say, or even when I meet with people and we end up with, okay, so take some time, think about it, get back to me, whatever, I always make sure to say, and if you contact me tomorrow, great. And if in a week from now, great. And 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, great. I'm not going anywhere. I'll specifically and explicitly say this next piece too of, I know what it's like to feel like, oh, I should write this person, but I got busy or forgot or lost track. And then it's a week later. And then I'm like, well, maybe they don't want to hear from me now because I should have gotten back to them a week ago. So then I don't. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, now they definitely don't want to hear from me. And it's just in your head. And that I always want to hear from you, that I say that explicitly because it is so common, especially for neurodivergent people, to end up thinking that they've screwed up because it's been too long since they've reached out,
Yeah. I remember you saying that to me, actually, and I really appreciated it. That there's no judgment, the door is always open. And I think if it's two neurodivergent people and you can have that conversation, I think that's really useful. If it's a long-standing friendship, I have a friend from home. We've been friends since primary school, middle school, I guess. We might not talk to one another for 6 months, and that's okay, because as soon as we meet again, we pick up where we left off. But I feel like those friendships are kind of rare, few and far between. And for maintaining adult relationships in the era of like Skype and Teams and WhatsApp and all the other apps that you're constantly being distracted by, I think it sometimes requires a more deliberate effort, especially if one of you identifies as neurodivergent and the other doesn't, and maybe there's misunderstandings around expectations.
Yeah. Well, certainly, again, people who identify as being neurodivergent are more likely to struggle with some of this stuff, not necessarily because they do better or worse at some given particular thing, but definitely because people who identify as neurodivergent, as we've talked about in the past, that means that they have an idea that there are certain societal expectations, or there are ways that the normal average person operates that is different than them. So even if you are doing everything the other person would expect or want you to be doing, the worry that you're missing something, the worry that you're doing something incorrectly, or that you should have done something differently, reached out sooner or responded differently or whatever, that's always going to be there for someone who identifies as neurodivergent. The only thing that's going to take that away is feeling comfortable and confident that the person that you're, the other person, the other end of the relationship, that they would tell you if they had a problem. And neurodivergent people often do not feel comfortable and confident in that, even with close relationships, that there's always, not always, but there's often this fear of, well, maybe they're mad at me, but they're just not telling me, kind of thing.
Does this tie in then with the rejection sensitivity?
Sure.
Yeah. So,
I mean, rejection sensitivity dysphoria is certainly partly like a specific thing about socializing and rejection from another human being, but it also kind of lumps in generally with that intensity of internal subjective experience that neurodivergent people, you know, that when I'm thinking about a thing, I can get into a place like hyperfocus, for example. If I hyperfocus on rejection, then that experience is going to be an experience that is, we could call an example of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, right? And if I have a particular pattern or predilection for hyperfocusing on rejection, perceived or otherwise, then we would say that, yes, I experience rejection sensitivity or have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Yeah, we think a lot about relationships, and the relationships that everybody loves the most, enjoys the most, are the ones that you don't think about, not thinking about the relationship, right? That if you ask anybody, how do you know that somebody's a real close, like good friend? Very commonly you'll get the answer from people of like, oh, they can come over and we can just sit and watch TV and do nothing, and it's not uncomfortable or awkward. Just people that you can be yourself around, meaning that you don't have to think about how are they perceiving, either because you feel totally safe that they're perceiving you in a way that you'd be fine with, or I suppose a combination of that you feel safe and comfortable that if there was something they didn't like, that they would tell you, so that you don't have to anticipate it, that they won't cut off the possibility. Which is part of all this ghosting stuff and whatever. This isn't like a new thing, right? Like we all always, you have your friends from high school, and then you go on to college and you maybe keep one or two of those relationships, but you lose the rest. And of course, people who don't go on to high school and stay at their hometowns, don't go on to college or don't leave their hometowns for whatever reason, might keep a higher portion of those, but still you're only going to keep a few of those relationships. Same thing with any transition. You work at a place and you make friends with a bunch of people. Once you stop working there, you might keep a handful of those relationships and the rest are going to fall away. Because when you don't have to be in the same position, the same like geographical location, you don't have to be interacting with other people, then it takes effort, and we have a limited amount of that effort. So that's a natural process. You're going to keep some and lose most as you go on. When you get married, when you start to have kids, like these are very stereotypical ones, but there's all kinds of changes. You start a new job or a business, you get real busy, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's nothing inherently like good or bad about that. But mostly what we're talking about, you mentioned a bunch there, the internet, is that this asynchronous communication, writing back and forth and texting back and forth, brings a very different dimension into this. Because there are a lot of like unwritten rules, and everybody has their different expectations about how long is an acceptable length of time before I respond to a text or an email, right?
Yeah.
But if I send you something, theoretically, the point of a text is that I don't need a response right away. If I needed you right away, I'd call you, right? And of course, there are reasons that people wouldn't want to call even if they need an immediate response. But theoretically, the point of asynchronous communication is this is something I want you to see and potentially want a response to, but you can look at it and respond in your own time. But then at a certain point, I start to think, well, why haven't you responded? And sometimes that's like 3 seconds. Sometimes it's like, why haven't you responded right away? And sometimes it's months before I'm going to be like, wait a second, why didn't that person respond?
Yeah.
So it's this guessing game. And mostly it's that fear of, if I do it wrong, I might not get another chance. If we're talking, you and I sitting down and talk, even on Zoom or whatever, if it's synchronous and I say something that comes across differently than I mean, or that you react to differently than I expect, I can see it and I can say, oh, hey, well, sorry, I didn't mean to, whatever, and we can talk about it. But if I send you something that does that, then you might be like, well, screw this guy, and never look at anything I send you again and never get back to me.
Yeah.
even if I don't think that you're the kind of person that would do that or wouldn't do it to me, it's a possibility that I have to consider that it could happen. I sent the wrong thing, I might never hear from you. So that brings in, especially again for neurodivergent people who spend a lot of our effort thinking about the different ways people will receive communication and interpret things differently. That brings in all this like, okay, I got to make sure that whatever I say it in such a way that there's little to no risk that it's interpreted to mean something which would cut them off from me ever being able to clarify. And that's a lot.
Yeah. It's why I will spend forever drafting an email, and I know you've said the same.
Yeah.
What if this punctuation offends them? What if the way I phrase this sounds too harsh? No worries if not. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face.
I don't want them to feel like I'm obligating them, but if I say no worries, I also don't want them to think that I don't expect it of them, and then I got to just, it's hard, and really it's impossible. You can't, in synchronous or asynchronous communication, you cannot predict how someone's going to respond with 100% accuracy, how they're going to interpret what you say with 100% accuracy. If nothing else, they could mishear your word and think you said literally a different word and take it in some other kind of way, or could scan quickly through the text or the email and misread something and think it's a, so even if you're very careful with your words, you can't control it completely. So that uncertainty, it comes in, and yeah, we could again go back to talking about that as rejection sensitivity dysphoria. But really it's about the comfort of, would this person clarify and give me a chance to clarify? You know, if I accidentally, or autocorrect is a comes here all the time, that we send something and hit send and then we look and we're like, oh shit, I mean, shoot, that's not what I meant to. They're like, some people, you send that and they're going to respond with like, I don't think you meant this, or did you mean this, or whatever. And you can be like, oh, no, thank you for giving me the chance to clarify. Some other people are going to see it and be like, well, screw you, and block you, at least theoretically.
Yeah. And this is something we don't have control over. And that's hard. I think that's hard sometimes to deal with, especially if you identify as neurodivergent, and maybe your experience growing up and making friends has been a fraught one, or maybe you're shy, or you're not comfortable in big groups of people, you don't feel like you mix well, and so every friendship feels kind of precious, and maybe that fear of losing that friendship is heightened. I don't know. It's just speculation.
Well, sure. I mean, it could be. Although, again, then what you would hope that is that means that relationship is one in which you can say to the other person, communicate to them, like I have many friends with whom I have said, like, hey, I'm terrible at keeping in touch. You know, I will always want to hear from you, and I'll always look forward to hearing from you. So please don't ever take it as, you know, if I haven't reached out to you in 6 months, that means I don't want to hear from you, because that's never the case, or whatever. Some people you feel comfortable saying that to, some you don't. Some people who you feel comfortable saying that to will hear it and believe it, and some won't. And some will believe it for a certain length of time, but then at a certain point be like, maybe not, or other things can influence it, or whatever. But I think another part of this is addressing this idea that a relationship should be maintained, because there's no inherent good in maintaining. Because, of course, if we're talking about maintaining a relationship, we can talk about specifically what we mean. But in this context, mostly what we're talking about is like communicating. We're actually getting in touch with or doing something with one another at some kind of consistent basis. It takes time and effort. And so when things happen, like you have 3 young children in the middle of a pandemic, and you know you're doing a lot of things and you just don't have the time, we worry then that the other person's going to read that as, oh, they're going to think I don't think they're important, which there's some truth to, in the sense that I don't think reaching out to them is as important as doing whatever other things I'm doing with my time.
Yeah.
But for the most part, my friends, I think, would agree with me when, you know, like me taking care of my kids and doing the things I need to do is more important than reaching out to them consistently.
Right. Yeah.
There's no like inherent good to keeping connected to a particular person. There is inherent value in keeping connections, a certain number of them, but to maintain this, like who's going to keep in touch with all the people they knew in high school and all the people? So again, some of this is that neurodivergent tendency to say, I'm sure I'm doing this wrong. I'm sure that there's something I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not. Like, is it really that big of a problem if you don't keep talking to somebody once circumstances change and you don't have as much to talk about?
Yeah. And I guess, are they making an effort to reach out and talk to you? Is the other question to ask.
Yeah. Well, and the idea that making effort somehow demonstrates value, right? Like, I make the effort, that means I find you valuable. But the truth is, again, like, think of your friends from work. Do you talk much about things that are not work related? And
not enough.
What do you mean not enough, Marie? What do you mean? There's some level of non-work related things that you're supposed to be talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can talk
about
where's
that belief from? This idea that you're supposed to talk to work friends about non-work related things, that there's some inherent good or value in that.
Oh, I don't think there is an inherent good or bad. It's just that I enjoy not talking shop with people I like from work. I like to be able to get to know them better. That's all.
Sure, but it's difficult because your shared language is based around work. It's not impossible. But I do want to challenge always this idea that it is somehow important or inherently good to do so, that you should push yourself to make sure that you're talking about non-work. You talk about whatever you talk about with the people that you're talking about it with. If they want to talk about other things and you want to make an effort because you want to do what they want to do, that's one thing. Or if you are worried that your relationship won't last past your working together and you want it to, then that's one thing. But unless there's a specific reason, there's nothing wrong with talking to people the way you do.
Yeah, because we've only got so much energy to go around, right?
Yeah, energy. I mean, all kinds of resources. Time is limited. Working memory, attention, all these things are limited. We only have so much. Yeah. So again, this tendency for self-identified neurodivergent people, and I say self-identified just as a shorthand for people who use that label or consider that label to be applicable to them. Not that somebody else might have given you that label, but if you think it's a good label, then you identify as. I just want to clarify that because some people by self-identified mean unofficial, no official identification, only self-identified. That's not what I mean. But this tendency of ours to just think we're doing something wrong, that there's something more that we're supposed to be doing and then feeling bad about it. Have you ever heard of Dunbar's number, Marie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it, like 150 or something?
Yeah, and that's that particular. I don't even know the person's first name, but Dunbar. That's their particular number is 150. But the concept is generally accepted. The idea that there is a limit, that relationships take resources from us that are limited, and therefore we can only have so many of them. And obviously, the closer and more detailed a relationship is, the more resources it takes, and the shallower and more fleeting a relationship is, the fewer resources it takes. So Dunbar's number in particular was 150. And what he means by that number is that you have enough space in your head to track about 150 people with any sort of like meaningful detail. Mm-hmm. So
that feels like a big number to me, but
yeah, well, there's and I'm blanking on names today. Doug, I Am a Strange Loop is the book, or Gödel Escherbach is the same author. I can't remember the name. Whatever. I like that model a little better, where what he's talking about is mental models of individuals. That I'm not actually interacting with you, Marie. You, Marie, in your full complexity is way beyond anything I could possibly even observe, much less comprehend or remember or conceptualize. So that what I'm doing is constructing a mental model of Marie that contains the particular things that I know and the things that I think about you and how you might react, and et cetera. Mm-hmm. And that these models take up resources, take up space. And the more detailed, if I have incentive for for example, my wife, Susan, who's a huge part of my life, there is good reason and good access to information for me to be developing my mental model, my understanding of her in great depth and detail. This is why, like, people that you love and enjoy, as you get to know them better, you're still going to fight with those people more than anybody else, because you still are not going to ever have a 100% accurate ability to understand what someone else is thinking or wanting or how they'll respond. It gets better and better, but there's always going to be something that you misunderstand or don't think about, and it comes back. And those arguments are ways that we refine our models of each other. So anyway, 150 is this idea of a rough number of about how many people can you track meaningfully, but really it's more weighted of like, you can have 2 to 3, like really, maybe 5 at most, really in-depth core relationships, and then like 8 to 10 of your main social group, and then so on and so forth. But one way I think that's useful talking about it is just stereotypes, including of the average person, the normal person, most people, whatever you want to call it. We have a model for that.
Yeah.
So I have a model in my head of what the average person is, and that you, Marie, then are the average person, except in such a way and such a way. Or that you, Marie, are, in my head, you're basically me, except for in such way and such way. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what we have most to draw off is ourselves, right? I'm getting off on all kinds of cognitive stuff that's not necessarily relevant to maintaining a relationship, but it's just, you have to know that there's only so much you can do. You can't keep all these relationships and make new ones. That's not possible. You got to make room for new ones, including especially something like meeting a partner, building a life together with another person, where that becomes a huge relationship and takes up the space that hundreds of very shallow work relationships might have taken up. Or having a child, that child theoretically is going to take the resources that were spread across, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a reason we observe these patterns. And that's okay. I don't know. I don't want people to feel some pressure to have to maintain something. Like, that's why I asked you about ghosting at the beginning, what you meant by ghosting, because people use it differently.
So if we go back to talking about social media and neurodivergent people in particular, one thing that I see that comes up around this is people saying, I have terrible object permanence, and that's why I forget my friends and I feel bad about it. I wondered if we could break down what object permanence means.
Yeah, well, that's a colloquial usage of the term. So object permanence is a technical term from developmental psychology, like how children develop.
Yeah.
I want to say it's Piaget is the person who came up with the concept of object permanence, but literally the concept of object permanence is the idea that a person can understand that a thing continues to exist even when I'm not directly observing it.
Yeah.
So like babies, if you show them something, they're all about it and whatever, you move it far away from them, but they can still observe it and they'll go for it or they'll want it or whatever. But you put it somewhere they can't see it or hear it or whatever, and they have no concept that it is still there. So they forget about it. They're not asking for it, etc. And then at a certain point that changes, and you can put something under a box, and instead of the baby thinking, oh, well, that thing no longer exists, they can open up, lift the box and see that it's there. I just keep wanting to get into cognitive stuff. I always want to do this stuff.
Why not?
There's a saying, the map is not the territory, meaning that, a map of the United States can be an accurate and useful representation of the United States. It isn't the United States. It couldn't be. It would have no utility if that would just be the territory itself. It's a symbolic representation. And in order to be a useful symbolic representation, what that means is we drop a lot of data, right? Like, instead of the specific knowledge of what happens in every foot of territory, it's all compressed and it's just colors and lines, and it's accurate, it's useful. And of course, there's maps that are inaccurate, right? We could draw a map and say it's of the United States, but really it's of the UK or whatever. and that would be an inaccurate map. So they can be accurate or inaccurate, but they're still massively, massively simplified. Everything in cognition works that way. Everything you think of is a symbolic representation of an actual thing. A really, really simplified map. A little overly simplistic piece that represents a thing. Like I said, I don't know the full complexity of you, Marie, as a person and everything that you. I have a very simplified version of you in my head, and that's true for everything, including even ourselves. So, object permanence, what that is at some point, theoretically, we develop the ability to abstract information. We take something that is real and complex and that our body can interact with, right? My body can specifically sense exactly what does this feel like on every inch of the skin and where's the weight distributed and et cetera, et cetera. But I can't consciously do all that. Consciously, I just have, a mug or this mug or whatever, a simplified version. So object permanence is that. It's the first time that we get evidence that a baby all of a sudden can hold an abstracted concept of something in their head without phenomenologically observing it. That they can see a thing, not see a thing, but still have a belief that it exists, and even do things like if I hold something up and I put something behind it, then the baby can make an expectation that it will come out this side, right? So we can make projections of that abstract thing and how it's going to go. That's what it technically means.
Yeah.
Colloquially, mostly what we mean is out of sight, out of mind, that without having a reminder of this thing, I don't always think of it. And yeah, that's true. When something is not in your environment, you don't think of it as much as you do as when it is in your environment. And that's not something that, again, individual people are necessarily worse at in some kind of neurobiological way.
Right.
Like there are patterns of our lives and patterns of behavior and things that might vary from a person to a person, but object permanence is not a variable you're better or worse at it. It's a thing that you either can or cannot do. And all adults can do it. Well, I guess I don't know, I don't want to make a blanket statement without making room for exceptions with intellectual disabilities and various disabilities. But, if you're following this conversation, you have object permanence. If you utilize language, you have object permanence. So again, it's hard to suss out how much of that is, I'm bad at remembering to call a friend versus, I think other people are better at remembering to call a friend than I am.
Yeah.
So the question really should never be, should I call my friend? Should I talk to this person? The question should be, do I want to talk to this person or not? Because if you get into should, then it just kind of messes up the whole process. How are you supposed to figure that out? Independent of wanting to talk to someone or interact with someone, what's the other data you're supposed to look at that helps you determine how frequently you should talk to them? And also, would you want someone calling you more frequently than they really want to intrinsically, just because they feel like they're keeping up their
Yeah.
Or would you be like, you don't have to call me all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You don't want other people to feel like they're under pressure to maintain a friendship.
Yeah. Because really, I think, you kind of mentioned this earlier, and I think most people would agree that the best relationships are the ones where I can go years without talking to someone, and then we run into each other and we talk like nothing has happened, like no time has passed.
Yeah.
And that's like the phrase that we use. And of course, what we mostly are doing is catching up. So it's not like we're talking really as though no time has passed. All we mean is it doesn't feel awkward. It feels as easy to talk with them as it did back in the day.
Yeah. There's no expectations, or there's less expectation, or there's an understanding that life goes on and things happen and it's okay to fall out of touch and fall back.
I would say yes, all that, except there's less worry that the other person has an expectation that you're not meeting.
Yeah.
Because the other person might, right? Like, let's say theoretically you're just not reading them well and they did have an expectation, they are upset, but if you don't read that in them, you still don't feel awkward.
Yeah. So it comes back to communication always.
Yeah. Communication, authenticity, and modeling.
Yeah.
In other words, you want people to do that with you, you got to do it with them.
Right.
You have to be honest with people. If they send a text that you're like, wait, does this mean that they hate me? Then you got to go back at them and say, hey, I just wanted to check on that text because it made me think that maybe you meant this. Is that right? Or whatever. Because you want them to do that for you, right? Like if you send something and they interpret it in some kind of way that makes them think that you might hate them, wouldn't you want them to check with you?
Yeah. Yeah, I have done that with one of our other coaches regularly.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's great. It's great. Is this my RSD playing up, or did you mean something else? And it's great to be able to just clarify it like that.
The more you do it, the more they'll do it.
Yeah.
Because that's what those relationships are. It's the people that you are not worried that if you did or said something that they didn't like, which you can't prevent, it will happen sometimes, but you're not worried that they will take that, interpret it in a certain way, change how they think about you or interact with you, and never bring it up with you.
Yeah.
Like our best friends are the ones that we fight the most with, right? If I am not fighting with somebody, arguing with somebody or whatever, it just means I probably don't care that much about that relationship.
Yeah.
It's just not worth trying to clarify what they meant or not. I'll just move on. But if someone I care about says or does something that really hurts me, then I got to clarify. I can't just give up on that person and move along.
Right.
Which is scary. But that's the solution. This isn't about, and of course, in practical terms, right? Like I have had times with people in the past where I've said like, okay, well, how about put a reminder in your phone to call so-and-so every whenever, or set up a weekly get together with your friend. Like that's something I'm working on right now, is setting up a weekly get together with my friends, because it's just hard. It's much easier if we have a weekly expectation than it is if every week or 2 weeks or so we text around and try and compare schedules. If we have a preset time, it's easier. Or even things like make a list of all the people that you're worried about that you don't connect with enough. Just keep it as your little menu, and then set a reminder on your phone or whatever for 3 times a week that just says call someone from the list. And when it pops up, you look at the list and decide who you want to reach out to in that moment. Yeah. So there are practical things to be done about it, but that still kind of relies on the idea that you should be contacting them at some inorganic, artificial rate.
Yeah.
Which sometimes matters depending on the relationship. But if we're talking about friendships, it really shouldn't.
Yeah, so that's when you have to ask if this is a friendship you really want to maintain.
Right.
And you have to be okay with the answer being no.
Yeah, well, I guess the question you'd really want to grapple with is, why would you want to maintain a friendship where you fear that the other person will cut you off or punish you if you don't connect with them at some artificial rate? Mm-hmm. You're worried that if you don't talk to them more than naturally happens, that will somehow result in them being mad at you. Why do you want to keep that relationship?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you shouldn't. It's just maybe the answer to that is that's not actually how they feel, and that's my concerns and my worries getting in, and I just need to clarify with them, or whatever else it is. Yeah. But really, this is more about like professional networking and stuff like that. There are plenty of people that we want relationships with because they're mutually beneficial, but if we don't make an effort to reach out to them, they kind of fall away or whatever. Also, I would say a good test for you, if you're ever having that problem of, I want to reach out to this person, but it's been so long and I'm ashamed and maybe they don't want to hear from me and whatever, here's your test. Just think to yourself, okay, it's been X time since we've communicated. Would I be happy to hear from them right now? And if your answer to that is yes, then you can assume that they would be happy to hear from you. Mm-hmm. If the answer to that is no, then yeah, maybe they won't want to hear from you either. And of course, this isn't going to be right 100% of the time, but what other information do you have to go off of?
Yeah.
If you would be happy to hear from them, they would probably be happy to hear from you.
I think there's always, I think from what I read on social media and stuff about this topic, there's shame around not being able to do what people think they should be doing. So we've talked a lot about the should. There's fear and anxiety around losing a friendship, or that the friendship is unequal, and that, oh, maybe it turns out that this person meant more to me than I meant to them.
That kind of unequal.
Yeah. Where one person feels like they've read more into the friendship than the other person has.
Yeah. That was kind of interesting to me, because what are we supposed to do about that?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, so what if I like you more than you like me?
Yeah, are we meant to beat ourselves up over that, over liking somebody?
Right. Am I supposed to guess how much less you like me than I like you, and then communicate with you that much less frequently? You know, like, I think you only like me 80% of how much I like you. So every time I want to reach out to you, I'm going to roll a dice. And if it's 80%, then I do. And if it's the last 20, I don't. Like,
I think we need to cut ourselves some slack as neurodivergent people and just be okay with things changing, or maybe not going the way we want. Be okay with rejection, which is really hard, because
well, you're never going to be okay with rejection. I mean, the whole point of wanting something to go a certain way is that you'll like it if it does, and you won't like it if it doesn't.
Yeah.
So we don't want to necessarily set up another impossible expectation that we're supposed to feel the exact same whether things go how we want or not.
Maybe not be okay with rejection, but be prepared for the possibility and have some mechanisms in place to deal with it.
Yeah, to be able to cope with it, or sure. Yeah. But really, this is another one of those places where, to me, so comparison is very simple. It doesn't take many. If I say I am tall, that's an easy thing for you to conceptualize. You don't need much data in order to be. It just means I'm taller than the average person, whatever that means, right? Mm-hmm. But it also doesn't give you a lot of specific information to interact with. Whereas if I say I'm 6'5", that's specific information, and it's harder to track. You're not going to walk around thinking, well, Brandon is 6'5", but it's easy to remember that Brandon is tall, right? So these comparison things, we do this. We compare things to each other because we have to. It's same as that Dunbar's number thing. And it's so much easier. It takes such fewer resources to say this thing is basically the same as this thing, except for this. But sometimes we need more information than that. So maybe they don't like me as much as I like them is one of those comparison things. What do you mean like, and how do we measure? It's obviously ridiculous to say that there's some way to categorize a number of I like them 80 and they like me 40.
Yeah. What
you mean is maybe there are certain particular things that I enjoy doing with them that they don't enjoy doing with me, or things that I think would be enjoyable to do with them that they don't think would be. So obviously a classic common example of this would be we're friends, but I want it to be more, kind of a thing, right? Mm. If I want to add a romantic element to our relationship and you don't, that doesn't mean that I like you more than you like me.
Yeah, it's just different.
There's a particular set of things that I'm looping under the umbrella of romantic behavior or whatever that I would like to engage in, and that you don't think you would like to engage in.
Yeah.
Instead of this more or less thing, they like you less. Does that mean they don't want to talk to you as frequently as you want to talk to them? Because then sure, be aware of that and how much you relate to them, or how frequently you try and contact them. Does it just mean they don't want to help you move and you would be fine to help them move? Like, okay, but all you have to do then is just don't ask them to help you move, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Get specific. These generic kind of, which one of us is putting more into this relationship than the other one?
It's all relative, right? It's we don't know the context in which the other person is going about their day and what else they're dealing with and why they don't have time to respond to every text message. Yeah.
Right. Because here, watch, I can whiplash people a little bit here. I think I'll try.
Okay.
That if you were to say, well, I care more about that person than they care about me, and therefore I shouldn't be reaching out to them. Well, you're already thinking about them. Does not reaching out to them actually mean that you're spending fewer of your resources on them? Or does it just mean that you're behaving in a particular way while you're thinking of them? Instead of calling them when you think about calling them, you don't call them when you think about calling them. But either way, you're thinking about it. Does that really mean you're putting less resources into it? Right? Don't you think that there are times, the whole point of this, the premise of this conversation is that there are people who reach out to you sometimes that you do care about and do want to get back to, but you don't for whatever reason. You forget or you get distracted and you worry that they think then that that means you value them less, but it doesn't always mean that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, isn't the flip side true then too? That sometimes when they're not getting back to you, it doesn't actually mean that they like you less. It just means that just like you, they want to get back to you and they care about you, but they're busy and they got distracted or they forgot or they have bad object permanence or whatever other thing.
Yeah.
But this convenient explanation of, oh, they like me less than I like them, which could theoretically be true, depending on how we're defining that or whatever. But how would you know? How are you going to know the difference between when someone's not responding to you because they're busy versus they're not responding to you because they don't like you?
Yeah. And again, it comes back to communication. You have to ask.
Yep. You just ask and you try it again. When those, because right here, right? Another one of these whiplashy things. If I say, reach out to somebody, and if they don't reach out to you and you're worried that they maybe don't like you, reach out again. And if they don't respond, reach out again. If they don't respond, reach out again. And a lot of people are going to respond to that by saying like, oh, and I'm supposed to just keep putting in effort, even though they're not returning. Like that makes me some kind of loser that's, blah, 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 blah. It's unfair how much I'm putting into it and they're not. But now let's flip it. If somebody reaches out to you and you're busy or you have bad object permanence or whatever, and you don't get back to them, do you want them to reach out to you again and try again? Or do you want them to give up after one try? Exactly. And if they do it twice, should they give up then? Or would it still be nice if they tried again when they thought of you later?
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to be consistent generally in how we interact with each other. That the things that I would want someone to do for me, I make an effort to do for them. And it doesn't mean it's always exactly the same because we're different people and different people want different things and we have different resources. And my friend who doesn't have 3 young children is going to have a lot more time on his hands to be reaching out to me than vice versa. So it's not do everything all the same. It's just theoretically, right? Like if I would like it, if blank, 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 I'll try to do that too. Can't do it for everybody, but you can try. Yeah, reach out again. Because again, what else are you going to do? Sit around and worry that they're not going to get back to you? It's not like you're going to stop thinking about them. If this is the scenario, right, that you want to reach out again and again, you just stop yourself. You just worry. Reach out again. And if nothing else, if they are some jerk that just doesn't want to talk to you, but doesn't want to say to you that they don't want to talk to you, keep reaching out until you put them in a position where they have to say, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because what else are you going to do? Just guess? And of course, we guess all the time. And it's, of course, fine to reach out to somebody. And if they don't respond to you, just be like, maybe not. Never mind. I don't know. Didn't think of it. That's fine, too. My point is that there's no wrong way to do this. You mentioned earlier, like, did the relationship just fizzle out, or are we not remembering to call each other, whatever? These are all just different versions of the relationship fizzling out.
Yeah.
Generally, we don't sit and have conversations with friends where we're like, okay, we're not going to communicate with each other anymore. We're cutting each other out. Like whether you're not responding to each other because you're busy or because you meet new friends and that's part of why you're busy, or you just forget and don't think about it. It doesn't matter the why. We change, our lives change, things move on. If you think about someone you want to reach out, reach out. If you don't think about them and don't reach out, fine. Yeah. If they reach out to you and you haven't been thinking about them and you want to respond to them, respond to them. And if you don't. I would say it's generally nice, to give a response and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm super busy, which is a thing that I have, again, worked with clients on and do myself, I think that it is nice in some cases, at least, to say like, hey, I'm not trying to like dodge or anything, but I'm in a tough spot right now, or I'm real busy right now, or even just saying like, I appreciate you reaching out, but honestly, I'm really struggling with socializing it all right now. Please keep reaching out, but I might not respond to you much until things turn around or whatever. Yeah. Just be honest. And if they're the kind of person that responds negatively to that, then wouldn't you rather know?
And then you can make a decision,
right,
on what you want to maintain that relationship. We're kind of talking about cost versus value here.
Yeah. And how everybody mistakes the two things for if they really cared about me, they'd make the effort. No, bullcrap. I can value something a ton and still not do it because my resources are taken up by other things that I value either even more in a general way, or I value even more in a very specific. I value you in a general sense more than these other things, but these other things have to be done by Tuesday, and you I can get to after Tuesday, so etc. Yeah. Not doing a thing doesn't mean you don't value the thing.
It just means that your headspace is taken up where you.
It means you either value the thing less than it's worth, less than the effort and the cost. Sometimes it is that. Sometimes it's just not worth it to me to put in the effort. Yeah. But sometimes it is worth it for me to put in the effort, but I still can't afford that cost right now. Yeah. Yeah. I have so many people in my life that, like, giving them a call, people I haven't talked to in years, that still, my guess or my thought or belief is that if I gave them a call and we hopped on the phone, it would be a nice, enjoyable, valuable conversation, well worth the time and the effort that I spend on it, that I would get something out of it. And I still don't do that because I got other things that I have to be doing. Yeah.
So it's not something we need to beat ourselves up over.
Yeah, just like everything else. Beating yourself up is a costly thing to do.
Yes, right.
And it only helps in a very limited set of circumstances. The most common one is that there is something that the cost, what it would cost you to do it, is greater than the value of it. But for some reason, you think that should be different. You think it should be worth doing. Well, if I start beating myself up over it, I'm increasing the value of doing it, because now when I do it, not only is it done and whatever the intrinsic value of it is accomplished, but I get the additional value of I get to stop beating myself up. So it's a way of artificially inflating the value. And that matters sometimes if it is a cost that I can theoretically afford to pay, but I just need to get that value up. Well, then I'll do it. But if it's something I already value more than it costs, beating myself up about it doesn't enable me to do it all of a sudden. And the act of beating myself up is something that takes resources. So the problem already was that I didn't have enough resources to do this in addition to everything else I'm doing. And now I've got even fewer of my resources free because I'm spending some of them on beating myself up, which accomplishes nothing for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying...
And it leaves you less time to work on that relationship, or less resources to work on that relationship or anything else that's a priority in your life.
This is how, we could talk about it in different terms, but depression, as an example, this is how this stuff escalates, is in therapy, in the therapeutic world, we call it maladaptive behaviors, or maladaptive coping patterns, or whatever, that there's some problem, and the thing that I do as an attempt to solve the problem actually makes the problem worse. So now the problem's worse. And what do I do to try and solve this problem that's even worse? I try the thing that I tried before, but even more. So it gets even worse faster. And then I really got to try the thing. And it just makes everything worse. Beating yourself up is one of those things that, unless you're lucky or something else kind of intervenes and breaks the cycle, you will end up spending everything you've got on it. You will beat yourself up about everything. You'll beat yourself up about the fact that you're beating yourself up.
Yes.
Hold on. Just generally things that in Buddhism, they call them the second arrow, that when you have a negative response to your own negative response, you're going to have a bad time. If something happens and it makes me angry, there's a limit. I get angry in proportion to whatever it is that happened, right? Some things make me a little angry, some things make me a lot angry, or whatever. And that varies. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. But if something happens and I get angry, and then I get angry because I'm angry, I'm like, damn it, I got angry again. What is wrong with me? Well, now I'm angrier, And so I can get angrier about the fact that I'm angrier, which means I'm angrier, which makes me angrier. It cycles infinitely. And it will take up everything that you've got. Feeling sad about the fact that you're feeling sad, feeling guilty about the fact that you're feeling guilty, feeling depressed about the fact that you're depressed. And I'm not saying that these are things that we can necessarily always control or that we can. I think that there are people who overemphasize this idea that you can choose how you respond to things, because we have influence over how we think and how we feel and what we do. We don't have total control.
Yeah. This is why we sometimes need to ask for help. Sometimes need to work with a therapist or a coach.
Yeah, or in the case of everything we're talking about here, you just talk to the person. That's the help you're asking for. Because you want, like, most people who are struggling with this issue, most people who are spending their time thinking, oh, I'm not doing what I should be doing to maintain a relationship, are going to be shocked by what I say next, and they're going to think it's ridiculous, but it's true. If you want to make somebody happy, ask them for help.
Mm-hmm.
I know you think that you're a burden. I know you worry that, oh, if I say, hey, are you mad at me? That's me being needy and clingy and whatever. And some people will respond that way sometimes. But if somebody you care about is struggling, would you rather know about it or not know about it? If they could use some help, would you rather know about it or not know about it? If somebody asks you for help, yes, sometimes we don't have the ability to give it and we want to, and that makes us feel worse. But generally speaking, if somebody asks you for help, does that make you think that they value you or that they don't? If you are able to help them, somebody you care about feels better, is doing better because of something you did, do you feel better or worse? If you don't ask somebody for help, you're making an implicit statement that you don't think they can help you, or you don't think they would be willing to help you. And can could be about they can't afford to, or they just can't do the things that you need. Either way. But nobody likes that. Nobody likes hearing somebody who they care about say, hey, I'm really struggling, but you can't help me. Ask them for help. They'll like it. And sometimes they won't. But more often than not, they will. And this is one of those things. It's just like, yes, sometimes when you reach out to somebody that was a good friend and it's been a couple years, sometimes they won't like it. But more often than not, they will. So are we going to avoid doing it because 10% of the time it will go poorly, so we don't do it any of the time? Or do you just do it knowing that 10% of the time it will go poorly, and when it does, you know how to deal with it?
Yeah.
Sometimes you ask for help and they'll feel bad because they can't help you.
But they'll understand that you trust them enough to ask for help. And that strengthens the relationship, right?
And once again, think about yourself. If somebody that you know and care about needs help, but you can't help them, if they don't ask you for help, does that make you not think that you, like, does that, you then don't feel bad about the fact that you don't think you can help them? Or are you still beating yourself up anyway for being like, oh man, I wish I was able to help them, whether they ask you or not?
Yeah.
So if they ask you, yeah, you're going to be upset that you can't help. But you were already, if you ask them, they might be upset they can't help, but they already were. And then doesn't that put you in your head even more? Oh man, are they not even asking me for help because they think I'm incompetent and whatever? Sometimes at least. So aren't you risking that? If you ask, you're risking putting them in a position where they were unaware that you could need help, and now they're aware and they want to help you, but they can't, which is a rare set of circumstances. If I'm going to feel bad about not being able to help you, it means I care about you. And if I care about you, then I'm probably going to be able to notice that you already needed help, whether you tell me or not. There are narrow windows in there where I care about you and would feel bad about not helping you, but don't pay enough attention or don't know for whatever reason that you don't need help. But it's rare compared to the chances that I think you do need help, but just think that you won't ask me because you think I'm so incompetent or terrible anyway. Or like, is that more or less likely than just ask people for help? Mm-hmm. You want them to ask you for help? Ask them for help. Because
and ask people what they need from the relationship.
Yeah. Just tell people what you want. Tell people what you need. Tell people what you like and what they don't like. And if they're not telling you, ask them. Mm-hmm. What do you like? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
I worry
it's scary, but I feel like the alternative is scarier.
Yeah, and again, this is something that happens for people who identify as neurodivergent at a higher rate because of what we think of ourselves and how we identify, is that we have this tendency to worry more about whether the other person likes what we're doing than we worry about whether we like what they're doing.
Yeah.
We go on a first date and you're so busy trying to figure out what they want and be that person that you forget to even evaluate whether or not they're somebody that you wanted to be around. Because you're scared of being rejected, which, is a fair thing. Rejection, in the history of human evolution, rejection equals death. There's a reason that banishment is the punishment that it was throughout human history. Being banished or exiled is death. There's a reason we feel that way. Don't beat yourself up. Why do I care so much about being rejected? Because for the vast, vast majority of the history of our species, being rejected meant you were going to die. It's literally a life or death thing. Logically, is that the case anymore? Rationally? No, not anymore. You have other people you can go access. But that's not how your brain and body were wired. So if you just ignore your own response, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It doesn't make sense. You can work through it and do different things. But you're not bad for feeling that way. And do you want to have a relationship? If you go on that first date and you figure out what they want and you give it to them, if that's different from what you would naturally normally have done, well, then what do you do on the second date? You got the second date because you gave them what they wanted. Then do you have to do that again? Or can you start relaxing and being yourself on the second date or the third? Or at what point? You get in a 6-month relationship and then you relax and be yourself? Is your hope that at that point they're so bought in that the sunk cost fallacy kicks in, and even though they don't like the real you anymore, they're stuck because they've invested too much? Is that what you want? Or is your hope that when you reveal it to them in 6 months, that then they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Well, if that's the case, wouldn't they be cool with it on the first date? And why wait time in between?
Yeah.
Or if you reveal it to them in 6 months and they don't like it and break up, is that better than just not having a second date? You'd rather go 6 months before finding out? That's the only thing. It's just a little bit of a glitch in terms of how dangerous is it for me to be rejected?
Yeah.
That we try to avoid the rejection. Same thing with this friend thing. Don't worry so much about whether or not they're going to reject you. The question to ask yourself is, what do you want out of the relationship?
Precisely.
And you go for that.
Yeah.
You want to talk.
And if it's not the relationship you want, then you can make room in your life for the relationships you do want.
Yeah. If you want to talk to someone once every 2 years, but you're worried they want to talk once every 2 weeks, who cares? They can reach out to you every 2 weeks, and if you're okay talking, then cool. But why would you waste time and effort trying to do the thing that you think they might want, which you might be wrong about, instead of just doing the thing that you want? It's okay for relationships to fall away.
100%.
There's no room for new ones. There's no room for existing ones to grow deeper. You don't have to replace every friend. Sometimes losing one friend just means that some other friendship gets an additional friendship's worth of resources spent on it. Found family, right? Like,
yes.
There's a reason. We're supposed to be doing it that way. We're wired to do it that way. To have just 2, 3, 4, 5 really close, and then maybe another 5 like very close, and then maybe another 10 to 20 of like, yeah, we're cool, we hang out, we chat, and then hundreds of I get along with them, but I don't think about them much when I'm not around them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta get going. I ran late again.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Glad to be back with you, and hopefully see you again next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Thank you, Marie.
Take care. Bye.